They smash through the wrong door at exactly the wrong second. Wood shatters, skidding across polished floors. 3 officers surge through the wreckage, guns drawn, adrenaline high, flash beams slice the dark like thrown knives. The lead detective's boot grinds splinters into the boards. His sergeant barrels in behind him, palm resting on his holster. Their captain lingers near the entry, eyes sweeping the ruined doorway, the broken lock, the hanging chain. The house absorbs the violence like it's been expecting it. The woman jolts upright in bed, covers twisted around her hips like restraints. Harsh white light floods the room, stabbing her eyes. She's wearing only boy shorts and an old cotton tank. "Hands where we can see them!" the detective snaps. She lifts her hands carefully, movement measured, gaze slowly clearing. Furniture lies overturned, drawers gutted, cabinet doors hanging crooked. Papers drift through the air like falling snow. The place looks ransacked already, and they've barely started searching her bedroom. Then the detective's flashlight stops dead. The beam pins something on the far wall. A dark navy jacket hangs from a simple hook, heavy and official. Bold yellow letters stretch across the back. FBI. The light stays locked there for 3 long heartbeats. His radio crackles at his shoulder, ignored. The sergeant's breathing shifts, turning shallow. The captain's stance tightens almost imperceptibly. The jacket hangs like a witness on the wall, loud without speaking. But nobody backs out now. They're already in too deep. We open in the blast zone, mid-chaos, while the central irony of the whole story clicks into place. Wrong door, wrong target, federal agent. The woman watches them tear through her room with the stillness of someone taking stock, not someone panicking. Her eyes follow the detective's badge, the sergeant's nameplate, the captain's rank pins. The glowing red digits on her cloak burn into her memory. 2:17 a.m. She catalogs everything with calm precision, as if she's writing a report. And when the sergeant yanks open her dresser, socks and shirt spilling onto the floor, she studies his face like evidence. Most people scream, beg, or freeze when police kick in their bedroom door. She calculates instead. The detective finds her purse sitting innocently on the nightstand. His hands move with a smooth, practiced rhythm that sets her teeth on edge. Too smooth, too rehearsed, a magician's hands. He slips something small into the side pocket, then fishes it back out a beat later. "Well, well," he announces, turning halfway toward his team. The woman's lips curl into the faintest ghost of a smile. Her federal ID folder sits in plain view on the dresser next to a half-finished case file. They brushed right past it without even noticing. On the nightstand, an encrypted phone hums quietly on its charger. Nearly 20 years of federal investigations live behind that lock screen. The detective lifts a tiny plastic bag by the corner, letting it dangle in the flashlight beam. White powder glitters as the light catches it, specks turning to bright shards in the air. The woman's fingers graze the edge of her sheets, just above the mattress seam. Beneath the fabric, hidden under the frame, lies something they overlooked in their rush. The phone on her nightstand still glows softly, full of encrypted recordings, confidential reports, covert surveillance logs. The detective has no idea who he's just dragged from bed, but she understands exactly why they're here. This isn't random, not a mistake. It's the moment she's engineered. The federal case files scattered over the bedroom floor tell a story that contradicts the one these men think they're writing. patterns of misconduct highlighted in yellow, names of officers circled in red. Her digital recorder, tucked inside the housing of the bedside lamp, has been rolling since the first blow hit the door. Every shouted command, every bootstep, every planted crumb of evidence, all preserved. The sergeant's hands tremble faintly while he fumbles through her closet. Good, she thinks. He should be terrified. Her body stays still, but her brain races through protocols. She silently reviews evidentiary rules, federal use of force guidelines, constitutional limitations. Probable cause, exigent circumstances, civil rights statutes. They have no clue what kind of legal landmine they've stepped on. The woman straightens a little where she sits on the bed, cuffs still absent, but inevitable. "I need to see your warrant," she says, voice clipped and controlled. "We don't need a warrant for a noise complaint, ma'am," the detective throws back. "You do. For a search this intrusive," she replies. Her tone makes the sergeant hesitate mid-rummage. "You've gone way beyond the scope of any legitimate noise complaint check," she continues. The authority in her voice doesn't fit the image of a half-dressed suspect in a wrecked bedroom. "You some kind of lawyer?" the detective sneers. "I know my rights under the Fourth Amendment," she answers. Level, professional, almost bored. "This entry and search are unlawful." The captain finally steps in from the hall. "Ma'am, we got reports of drugs coming out of this address," he says. "From who?" she counters instantly. "What probable cause justified forced entry?" The three men trade quick glances. Her question hangs in the shattered air like dust. The sergeant recovers first. "Anonymous tip. Said you were selling," he mutters. "Anonymous tips don't authorize warrantless home searches," she replies without missing a beat. Case names slide off her tongue like she's reciting a script she wrote herself. Miranda, Terry, MAP, foundational cases, each one a brick in the wall that's supposed to stand between citizens and this exact kind of intrusion. The detective's jaw clenches. "You think you're clever?" he snaps. I think you're violating federal law," she cuts in. The phrase lands heavier than anything she's said so far. Federal law, not just some local ordinance. The captain clears his throat, trying to reassert control. "Let's just get her processed," he says, voice lower now. But the woman isn't finished. "Your badge numbers," she says calmly. "All three of you!" The sergeant bristles. "You're in no position to make demands," he growls. "Every citizen has the right to identify officers conducting a search," she replies. She looks at each man in turn. "Badge numbers now!" The detective's hand drifts automatically to cover his chest. "You don't need—" "The law disagree," she says quietly. Her steady insistence unnerves them more than shouting ever could. Most people they cuff are stunned, scared, easy to steer. This woman picks apart their procedure like a surgeon dissecting tissue. The captain finally rattles off his number with visible reluctance. The others mumble theirs after him. She repeats each sequence perfectly, committing it to memory like a locker combination. "I also need confirmation that your body cameras are active at AI," she says. The sergeant's hand taps his chest rig. A steady red light blinks up at him. "They're on," he answers. "Good," she replies. "So when this lands in federal court, there'll be a full record." Federal court. There it is again. The detective leans in close, breath hot with irritation. "Listen, lady," he says. "We found drugs in your house. You either cooperate or we make this very difficult." "Is that a threat?" she asks, eyebrows lifting. "I'm giving you options," he says through his teeth. She studies his face like it's page 1 of a file. Option 1, she says slowly. I confess to a crime you know I didn't commit. Option 2, you stack bogus charges until I break. The room falls dead quiet, except for the hiss of a radio static. You got a smart mouth, the sergeant mutters. I have constitutional protections, she counters. The detective slips handcuffs from his belt, metal glinting in the flashlight beam. You're under arrest, he declares. On possession of a controlled substance. The cuffs click shut around her wrists, cool metal biting her skin. She angles her face toward the nearest chest camera. I am being arrested on the basis of planted narcotics, she states clearly. These officers entered without a valid warrant or probable cause. I did not consent to this search. Shut up, the detective hisses, yanking her to her feet. I have the right to remain silent, she continues, unshaken, but I also have the right to speak. This is a false arrest based on fabricated evidence. The sergeant clamps a rough hand around her arm. Move, he snaps. She walks when he pulls, not resisting, but she narrates every step. I'm requesting immediate access to legal counsel, she says. I'm requesting review of all body camera footage from this incident. I'm requesting a supervisor outside this unit. Each phrase aligns perfectly with departmental policy. Her knowledge is too sharp, too technical, too experienced. The captain studies her as they drag her into the hall. Something about this doesn't fit the profile he expected. As they haul her through the wrecked living room, she silently logs each violation: forced entry without proper justification, excessive damage, evidence staging, civil rights violations stacked one atop another. The detective finally asks the question, twisting in his gut. How come you know so much about procedure? He demands. The woman doesn't answer. She doesn't have to. Her federal credential folder still sits on the dresser, untouched. But the silence coils around them like wire. The planted baggie isn't the only thing that doesn't belong in that house. At the front door, the sergeant finally feels the itch in his instincts. She knows more than any civilian he's ever cuffed. Her questions are razor precise. Her vocabulary sounds like briefing notes, not internet law talk. Normal people don't cite precedent during an arrest. Normal people don't demand camera audits. Normal people don't sound like they've sat through 1,000 internal review meetings. The detective shoves her toward the squad car, but doubt shakes his voice. You ever been locked up before? He asks. No, she answers simply. Then how do I what? She asks, turning the interrogation back on him with a single question. He doesn't finish the sentence. Can't. Because the answer is something bigger than he's prepared to face. The sergeant opens her rear door, radio chatter spilling into the night. Domestic disturbance downtown. Traffic stop gone sideways. The city keeps pulsing along, oblivious, while these three men commit the stupidest act of their careers. The woman slides into the back seat carefully, cuffs biting deeper. Through the bulletproof glass, she watches them bag the evidence they smuggled in. They photograph broken furniture, shattered glass, twisted hinges. They record everything except the truth. But the truth has its own tools. Her encrypted phone still glows on the nightstand upstairs. Her federal files still litter the floor. Her credentials still gleam under the bedroom lamp. And the hidden recorder inside that lamp keeps running, capturing every lie they'll try to tell later. The detective slams the rear door, the sound sharp in the cool air. Through the closed window, she can still hear him speaking to the captain. "Something's off about her," he mutters. "What do you mean?" the captain asks. "She knows way too much," the detective says. The captain glances at the car, at the woman sitting impossibly calm in the back. "Run her name as soon as we hit the station," he orders. "Already planning on it," the detective replies. But the damage is done. The line already crossed. They've created evidence they can't easily bury. And they did it on camera. The woman in the back seat isn't the victim they think she is. She's the consequence they've been dodging. The patrol car pulls away from the curb, leaving broken glass glittering in the streetlights like scattered diamonds. The detective drives. The sergeant rides shotgun. The captain follows in his unmarked sedan, standard protocol for suspects they consider high value. But nothing about this situation is standard. The woman sits in the caged back, wrists cuffed tight behind her, metal partition framing the backs of their heads. She studies their faces in the reflection of the side window, using the glass like a mirror. The sergeant twists around. "You gonna tell us what you really do for a living?" he asks. She says nothing. The strong, silent suspect they were trained to dominate. "We'll see how long the attitude lasts," the detective mutters, adjusting the rearview mirror until her eyes meet his. Aditins. Wildisafors. His radio buzzes with routine calls, fights, burglaries, traffic stops. The night patrol rolls on, unaware they've just detonated a federal operation. The sergeant's voice drops, almost swallowed by the radio noise. "You think she heard anything?" he asks. "Heard what?" the detective replies too quickly. "You know what," the sergeant says. A pause stretches. The radio fills it with codes and call signs. "She can't know about that investigation," the detective insists. But uncertainty scrapes his words. In the back, the woman memorizes everything. Tone, phrasing, hesitation. They turn onto a wide street where the police headquarters rises ahead. All concrete angles and fluorescent glare. A fortress built to process people like her. The detective swings the car into the secured sallyport. Cameras track their arrival from 3 different angles. Red indicator lights, glowing. "All right," the sergeant says, twisting around again. "This can go easy or hard, completely up to you." The woman meets his gaze in the mirror, expression almost kind. "Which option protects your careers best?" she asks. The question drops like ice in a glass. The detective kills the engine with more force than necessary. "What's that supposed to mean?" he demands. "Means you should think carefully," she answers. The sergeant tries for a laugh, but it comes out thin, brittle. "You're the one in cuffs," he says. "For now." 2 small words, delivered so quietly, they chill him more than shouting ever could. The detective steps out, opens her door, and hauls her up. The cuffs grind into the tendons of her wrists as she stands. "We're going to teach you some respect," he mutters under his breath. She doesn't fight him, doesn't pull away. She just mentally notes every shove, every unnecessary jerk, every transport policy they ignore. Their body cameras catch it all from multiple angles. Inside, fluorescent lights buzz overhead, washing everything in sickly brightness. The booking sergeant at the intake desk looks up from his forms. "What do we got?" he asks. "Cocaine possession. Resisting," the detective answers automatically. "I did not resist," the woman says clearly. "Not once." "I said quiet," the detective snaps. The booking sergeant's eyes narrow. Something about her tone doesn't match the charges on the clipboard. I need to place a phone call, she says calmly. You'll get your call when we say, the detective shoots back. That's not how it works, she replies. Denying timely access violates policy and case law. The booking sergeant frowns. Ma'am, you have the right to... She already knows her rights, the detective interrupts. She won't shut up about them. Standard intake procedure grinds forward anyway. Fingerprints, front and side mugshots. Jewelry and watch, bagged, tagged, logged. When they get to her wallet, the booking sergeant pauses. Says here you work for the federal government, he remarks slowly. The detective's fingers freeze over the keyboard. What kind of federal job? The booking sergeant asks. The woman stays silent. She doesn't need to answer. The system will speak for her. The sergeant types her legal name and ID number into the computer. The back-end queries multiple databases at once, cross-referencing identifiers. A warning banner flashes across the screen in stark red. Detective, the booking sergeant calls, voice suddenly careful. You need to check this out. The detective leans over the monitor. His face drains of color. The woman's ID triggers a special protocol flag. Federal law enforcement officer, over 20 years of service. Current assignment, Department of Justice, Public Integrity Section. Internal investigations. This some kind of glitch? The detective whispers. The computer doesn't blink, doesn't hesitate. The booking sergeant glances at the woman's cuffs, at the fresh bruises forming on her wrists. Training takes over. Federal officers in custody require immediate notifications, special handling, documentation. I gotta make some calls, he says quietly. The detective grabs his arm. Not yet, he insists. Detective, if she's federal, she's a suspect, that's it, the detective snaps, panic sharpening his tone. But the monitor tells a competing story, and screens don't flinch under pressure. The woman watches panic bloom behind his eyes. She sees the exact second he understands what he's done, how far he strayed past any safe line. She spent 2 decades waiting for this scenario, shaping investigations, building patterns. Tonight, these 3 didn't just hit the wrong address. They busted into the home of the federal prosecutor targeting them. Officer Megan Price sits alone in the equipment room, reviewing body camera footage as part of routine end-of-shift checks. She fast-forwards through a timestamp that catches her eye. 02:17 a.m., the raid. Door flying off its hinges. The half-dressed woman raising her hands, voice steady, asking specific questions about warrants and probable cause. Megan rewinds, plays it again, slower. The woman doesn't sound like any drug suspect she's processed. She sounds like someone leading a deposition. Megan's gut twists. Something is fundamentally wrong with this entire arrest. She watches the detective's hands as he discovers the baggie. The movement is smooth, too smooth. She's seen him handle evidence before. Always that same slick, theatrical efficiency, only this time she has angle and timing. The camera catches the subtle slide into the purse before the dramatic reveal. Megan's stomach flips. She's heard rumors, whispers in locker rooms, strange gaps in reports, but never caught it herself. Never had it recorded in high definition on her own assigned equipment. Now she can't pretend it's speculation anymore. She fast-forwards to the moment of arrest. The woman's voice is clear, unwavering. I'm being arrested on planted evidence, she says right into Megan's lens. This search is unconstitutional. Megan pauses the video and zooms in on the woman's face. There's no frantic confusion there, no glassy shock, just cold, methodical focus, like she's observing them for a case file. Megan runs the woman's name through the system, tapping in the ID she glimpses on the booking desk screen. The return results make her blood run cold. Federal law enforcement, senior prosecutor, over 20 years in public corruption work, assigned to the very division rumored to be sniffing around their department. Megan's pulse spikes. She cross-checks. Same name appears on several internal justice memos about ongoing inquiry into misconduct within regional law enforcement agencies. The woman isn't just some federal employee. She's the one building a case against them. Has been for months, maybe longer, and tonight, Detective Harris and Sergeant Danner handed her everything on a platter personally. Megan's loyalty to her unit slams into the brick wall of her conscience. These men taught her to shoot, to clear rooms, to read streets. They covered for her mistakes. They toasted her promotion. But family, she thinks, doesn't frame people, doesn't ignore the Constitution, doesn't lock up a federal prosecutor investigating them. Her phone buzzes. A text from the detective flashes on the screen. Delete the footage. Say the camera glitched. Megan stares at the message, at the naked order to obstruct justice. She types back, copy, because if she refuses outright, they'll suspect her. But she doesn't erase anything. Instead, she plugs the camera into the secure terminal, bypasses the usual archive folder, and uploads the full file set to an encrypted federal evidence server she once used during a joint task force assignment. The same system the woman probably logs into weekly. Megan's next move will define everything that comes after: her badge, her reputation, her ability to look in a mirror. Captain Harlan Bates appears in the doorway. "Price that footage wiped yet?" he asks casually, eyes anything but. "Working on it, sir," she answers. Bates studies her face, searching for cracks. "Good. This stays between us," he says. His emphasis on this tells her this isn't their first cleanup. The rumors of federal eyes on the department suddenly feel less like gossip and more like inevitability. The woman, whoever she really is, hasn't just been investigating from afar. She's been embedded in their mess for years. And tonight, they crossed her line. FBI Assistant Director Samuel Ortiz jolts awake when his secure phone buzzes on the nightstand. The tone is one reserved for emergencies involving undercover assets or senior prosecutors. He answers before the second ring. "Ortiz," he says. "Sir, this is Control for Project Clean Sweep," the voice on the line replies. "We have a situation involving Prosecutor Elena Ruiz." Ortiz is fully upright now. Elena is his sharpest corruption investigator with 2 decades of service and a record of airtight cases. "Status!" he demands, already reaching for his clothes. "She was taken into custody by local police within the last hour," Control says. Possession charges. The arresting officers are targets in her active investigation." Ortiz clenches his jaw. "Unknown to them?" "Yes, sir," Control replies. "Evidence suggests they planted narcotics. We have body camera confirmation." Ortiz's hand freezes over his shirt buttons. Elena's emergency beacon activates next on his secondary phone, a failsafe triggered only when she deems her life or mission critically endangered. A red dot appears on his screen, locking onto the city precinct. "Full response protocol," Ortiz orders. He calls his deputy before hanging up. "Operation Clean Sweep just got blown open," he says. "Ruiz is in local custody on bogus charges." "How bad?" the deputy asks. They arrested the lead prosecutor building a corruption case against them, Ortiz answers, on camera, with planted evidence. At the federal building, lights flicker on as his rapid response unit gathers. Tactical support, digital forensics, internal affairs, all moving with practiced urgency. The corruption file on that police department is thick. Tonight, it turns radioactive. Ortiz briefs his team inside a mobile command truck while it rolls toward the station. Prosecutor Ruiz has been working this case for 2 years, he says, flipping open her file. 18 months of that operating in close, undercover coordination with internal sources. One agent whistles softly. They really grabbed her? Yes, Ortiz says, and in doing so, they handed us direct, contemporaneous evidence of the conspiracy we've been painstakingly mapping. The surveillance van sets up across from the station, antennas and dishes quietly locking onto police communications. Radio traffic bleeds into Ortiz's headset. Nervous officers reminding each other of the story. Code words for minimizing damage, protecting reputations. Director, they're talking about scrubbing footage, his communications tech reports. Internal orders to classify body cam malfunctions. Too late, Ortiz says. He opens Elena's master case file. Pages and digital tabs document years of excessive force complaints, suspicious dope arrests, mysteriously lost evidence. Names repeat. Patterns harden. Tonight's arrest threads through every pattern like a needle, pulling the fabric tight. Warrants sit ready, already signed. Director, we've got movement, another tech calls out. They're prepping a transfer to county lockup. On a monitor, Ortiz watches grainy security footage of the woman being led down a hallway, still in cuffs, face composed. That transfer is not happening, Jai, he says. He keys his mic to the legal team. Execute the federal warrants, all of them. We're asserting jurisdiction now. Subtoin. Agents move like a tide, vehicles repositioning, badges ready. Inside the station, phones are about to start ringing. Outside, federal authority is lining up at the door. Back in the holding area, Elena sits on a hard plastic bench in a cramped cell, cuffed to a steel ring. The cinder block walls smell like disinfectant and fear. Across the hall, another detainee snores. A camera above the door blinks a slow, lazy green. She breathes evenly, replaying each moment of the raid in her head, matching it to the audio she knows is still recording in her bedroom lamp. Her emergency beacon pulses silently from a chip embedded in her watchband, one she never removes. Down the corridor, Sergeant Danner paces outside the holding cells, agitation in every step. We need to move her to county fast, he tells the captain, before this turns into something bigger. We'll process the paperwork, Captain Bates replies, though his eyes flick to the security cameras uneasily. They both know transfers complicate oversight, scatter responsibility. Elena watches them through the cell window, reading their body language like deposition transcripts. They're worried, good! She shifts slightly, letting the watch catch the fluorescent light, the beacon signal already screaming. At the booking desk, Megan Price stands frozen between two worlds. Captain Bates leans over her shoulder. I asked you if that footage was gone, he says softly. Almost done, sir, she lies. On her terminal, a progress bar shows the upload to the federal server at 92%. Her cursor hovers over the local file, the delete option glowing. Her thumb taps a nervous rhythm on the desk. Equipment glitch, right? Bates prompts. Yeah, she says. Camera's been acting up all week. Her voice barely wavers. The upload hits 100%. The file disappears into encrypted federal storage, replicated, backed up, secured. Megan finally clicks delete on the local copy, wiping any trace from the department's system. "All clear," she says, forcing a steady tone. Bates claps her shoulder. "Knew you were a team player," he says. The praise feels like acid. Megan knows she's just crossed an invisible line. Not their line, hers. She's no longer just another officer looking away. She's a witness, maybe the most important one Ruiz has. In the cell, Elena hears the distant ring of the station's main phone. Then another. Voices rise, tense and clipped. A supervisor rushes past the holding area, tie askew, cell phone pressed to his ear. "What do you mean, Federal?" he hisses as he walks. Another officer pokes his head in. "We got somebody from Justice on line 3 asking about a prosecutor Ruiz," he says to Bates. The captain's face blanches. "Let it go to voicemail," Bates says. His voice lacks conviction, even to his own ears. The booking sergeant clears his throat. "Captain, sir, the system auto-notified federal oversight when we processed her ID," he says reluctantly. "They'll keep calling," Bates swears under his breath. "We get her to county. She's not our problem anymore," he mutters. "Let them argue jurisdiction with the sheriff." Elena listens, filing away every word. Jurisdictional tug-of-war, conscious attempt to avoid oversight. She glances at the camera in the ceiling corner and gives the faintest smile. Ortiz's team should be outside by now, right on schedule. In the mobile command truck, Ortiz watches the station's security feeds that his techs quietly tapped. "There," he says, pointing to Elena's holding cell on one screen, to Bates and Danner conferring on another. "That's our core group." Radio intercepts spill into the speakers. "Get her chained out," a voice orders. "Transport van in 15. Ortiz nods once. "Hey, we move now," he says. He keys his radio. "All units, execute. Badges visible, body cams rolling. We're going in loud and clean." Doors swing open. Federal agents pour out. The glass doors of the station fly wide as a wedge of FBI and Justice agents strides in, tactical windbreakers flaring. The desk officer's eyes go saucer-wide. "Can I help you?" he stammers. Ortiz flashes his credentials. "Assistant Director Samuel Ortiz, Department of Justice," he says. "We're here on federal warrants for records, video, and personnel." He slides a folder across the counter. "You are now under a legal obligation to preserve all evidence regarding prosecutor Elena Ruiz." The desk sergeant swallows hard and reaches for the phone. Back in holding, Elena hears the sudden shift in energy. Doors opening. Footsteps with purpose instead of boredom. Raised voices, not yet shouting, but trending there. An officer appears at her cell. "They're moving you," he says tightly. "County transport just got here." "You sure about that?" she asks mildly. He unlocks the door, cuffs her behind her back again, and leads her toward the corridor. As they approach the main hall, she sees navy jackets through the windows, gold letters shining. The cavalry has arrived. Ortiz spots her immediately, even in jail scrubs and restraints. "Prosecutor Ruiz," he calls, voice carrying through the lobby. Bates steps between them. "This woman is in our custody on local charges," he says. Ortiz holds up a document. "Not anymore," he replies. "By authority of these warrants, she's being transferred into federal protective custody, effective now." The lobby goes silent. Elena's lips twitch upward. Bates looks around and sees cameras, federal badges, a dozen witnesses. He realizes there is no quiet way out of this. Megan edges into the lobby, heart pounding, clutching her own body camera like a lifeline. One of Ortiz's agents approaches her. "Officer Price?" he asks. "We got your upload." She exhales for the first time in what feels like hours. "It's all there," she says quietly, from the door breach to the booking desk. Ortiz glances at her, reading the turmoil in her expression. "You understand what this means?" he asks. Megan nods. "Yeah," she says. "It means I'm testifying against my own unit." Ortiz turns back to Elena, who stands straighter now, shoulders rolling back into their usual confidence. "You picked quite a way to trigger your beacon," he says dryly. "They handed me the opportunity," she replies. "I just documented it." Agents move around them, serving warrants, securing evidence lockers, instructing its staff to mirror servers. Somewhere in the building, someone is desperately trying to shut down a computer, to pull a plug, to erase a file. Too late! The federal team came prepared for exactly that kind of panic. In the equipment room, a justice tech pulls Megan's body camera feed from the federal server, verifying checksums, timestamps, integrity. "Clean upload," he reports. "No signs of tampering." Megan leans against a locker, relief and dread warring inside her. Outside the door, she can hear raised voices, officers protesting, supervisors demanding explanations. "You did the right thing," the tech says quietly. She nods, not trusting herself to speak. Doing the right thing, she realizes, doesn't feel heroic. It feels like standing on the edge of a cliff. Ortiz watches as Bates and the detective are separated from the general chaos and guided into an interview room where cameras already roll. Sergeant Danner tries to follow, but another agent intercepts him. "You'll get your turn," the agent says. Elena walks beside Ortiz toward the exit that leads to a waiting federal vehicle. The cuffs are still on, but her posture radiates control. "You know this is just the opening salvo," Ortiz says. "I know," she replies. "They spent years building this culture. We'll spend years dismantling it." Outside, dawn starts to gray the sky over the station. The justice convoy idles at the curb, engines low and steady. Officers cluster inside, whispering, phones buzzing with rumors whipping through the department. Elena pauses before getting into the car, looking back at the building where her case has finally broken open. Broken glass still clings to her memory. Her front door, her living room, her bedroom lamp recording everything. The officers who thought they were writing another rigged report don't know it yet, but their reckoning has officially begun. The Metro cops have no idea what's about to hit them. For over 2 years, Elena Ruiz has been quietly collecting proof of their dirty work. Rigged evidence, bogus arrests, civil rights violations stacked like bricks. She logged everything. Tonight, they handed her the missing piece. Abe in Manxton. In the command truck, Ortiz checks her beacon again, still pinging from inside the station. Team leaders get ready for rapid entry as his radio fills with confirmations. Federal units ring the building. Ortiz's order flips the script. Full federal deployment. The operation Elena spent most of her 20-plus-year career constructing is about to close. Not with her in chains, but with them in cuffs. In the surveillance van, hardware locks onto the station's internal network. Body cam servers, evidence drives, dispatch logs, private channels. Everything Elena needs to finish her case. Everything Ortiz needs to shut this department down. Her beacon proves she's exactly where they expected, at the heart of the rot, capturing the last damning proof. Ortiz keys his mic. All teams, federal authority now active. Inside, the locals still think they've neutralized their biggest problem. They haven't. They've triggered their worst-case scenario. Elena sits alone in interview room 3. Dull gray paint, cold metal table, a single bolted chair. The fluorescent tube hums overhead, flickering like it's dying. The detective strides in carrying an overstuffed folder, slaps it down with staged confidence. "Yeah, let's talk about your drug operation," he says. Elena stays silent, eyes sliding to the ceiling camera. The red light blinks steadily. "Good. Everything is rolling. We pulled high-grade coke out of your place," he continues. "Street value around $5,000. "Planted contraband," Elena replies. The detective leans back. "You sure about that?" "I watched you slip it into my purse," she says. "That's not speculation. That's documented fact." He opens his file, pages of fabricated reports, bogus surveillance logs, invented chain of custody forms. "Paperwork says you've been dealing for months," he insists. "Your paperwork is fiction," Elena answers. "Multiple witnesses saw dealing at your address." "Name one," she says. Silence stretches. "Anonymous sources," he finally mutters. Elena almost smiles. "Anonymous sources don't survive scrutiny in federal court." There's that word again. Federal. It scrapes at his nerves. His confidence slips. "You really think federal court's going to rescue you?" He scoffs. Elena meets his eyes. "I think that's exactly where this ends." The door swings open. Sergeant Danner steps in without knocking, leans down to whisper urgently in the detective's ear. Harris stiffens, jaw tightening. "Step out," he tells Elena, curtly, then corrects himself. "Stay put." They exit together. Alone, Elena hears their muffled argument through the thin wall. "The system flagged her as federal," Danner says. "So what?" Harris snaps. "So we just put cuffs on a senior prosecutor," Danner hisses. "She's a dope-dealing fed, that's all," Harris insists. "Detective, this is dangerous territory." Elena uses the lull like a checklist. Late Miranda advisement, denied phone call, rough transport. Every misstep is another brick in her eventual indictment. When Harris storms back in alone, he slams the door harder than he needs to. "Let's run this again," he growls, dropping into the chair. "Who's your supplier?" "I don't use or sell cocaine," Elena replies. "The evidence says different." "The planted evidence," she says. His fist slams the table. "Stop calling it that." She doesn't blink. "Stop planning it." He leans forward, crowding her space, pressure tactic straight from the manual. "You think you're clever? Think you're going to outplay us?" Her next sentence drains the color from his face. "I think you've been under federal investigation for over 2 years. The room goes dead quiet, just the buzz of the failing light. Harris slowly straightens. "What did you just say?" "Operation Clean Sweep," Elena replies. "Ring a bell?" The blood leaves his face completely. Clean Sweep is tightly controlled. Only federal investigators and top-tier corruption targets know that name. Elena keeps going, voice cold and precise. Patterned evidence staging, civil rights violations, organized conspiracy to strip citizens of constitutional protections. His hands tremble. "And how do you know about your crimes?" she finishes. She doesn't elaborate. She doesn't have to. Harris backs towards the door. "I need to make a call," he mutters. "To Captain Bates. Or maybe to your lawyer," Elena suggests. He stops with his hand on the knob. You should think hard about that, she adds. Your next choices matter. He bolts, leaving her with the camera and her thoughts. Through the wall, tension spikes. Phones ringing, frantic voices. Decisions made too fast. Panic spreads through the station like a gas leak. They can feel something coming. They just don't know how big. Officer Megan Price appears in the doorway, nerves visible in the tight set of her jaw. "Ma'am, I brought you some water," she says. Megan sets a paper cup on the table, fingers brushing Elena's for a second. Understanding passes between them, wordless. She slides a small folded scrap across the metal. Elena palms it without glancing, waits until Megan leaves before unfolding it beneath the table. Feds know. Help inbound. Hold steady. Relief hits her chest like oxygen. She is not alone in this building. Bates's abrupt cancellation of her transfer tells its own story. Outside, pressure is tightening. The interview room door opens again. This time, Bates himself steps inside, smile stretched too wide. "Prosecutor Ruiz," he says, carefully choosing the title. "I owe you an apology for the misunderstanding. Not suspect, not dealer. The pretense evaporates in an instant." Elena rises slowly, chains clinking. "I'd like to exercise my right to a phone call now," she says. "Of course," Bates answers quickly. The power dynamic has already flipped. As they walk down the corridor, Megan falls in beside them, holding an evidence bag. She edges closer, then presses something into Elena's cuffed hands as discreetly as possible. Elena feels the cold metal shape before she looks. Her federal badge, back where it belongs. That familiar weight in her palm steadies her heartbeat. Very soon, the real case will start. Bates brings her to the release desk, his expression a mask of professional courtesy stretched over raw fear. "All charges are being dismissed," he announces. "Pending further review," he adds, attempting to save face. The booking sergeant moves quickly, too quickly, racing through release paperwork. He just wants her out of their building before more shoes drop. Elena signs where indicated, retrieves her property tray, wallet, keys, credentials, encrypted phone. Her screen lights. 20+ missed calls from Justice. Bates clears his throat. "We're sorry for any inconvenience," he says. Elena looks him dead in the eye. "Whether there are hard feelings isn't your call," she answers. The words land like a warning shot. Outside, early light bleeds across the horizon. Elena walks toward her sedan, acutely aware of eyes watching her every step. She unlocks the car, slides in, and activates full audio capture on her phone. From this moment on, every interaction feeds into the case. The device buzzes instantly. Secured call from Ortiz. "Ruiz, are you clear?" he asks. "Negative," she says. "They're still tailing me." "Copy," he replies. "Our teams are staged." She starts the engine, but doesn't pull away, staying parked under the station's cameras. On purpose. "Status!" Ortiz demands. Elena watches the station in her rearview mirror as she speaks. "They gave us everything," she says. Body cam proof of planted dope. Multiple constitutional violations on tape. Obstruction attempts already in motion. "Outstanding," Ortiz replies. Inside, the station glows. Office lights blazing on every floor. Emergency huddles underway. "They know about clean sweep," Elena adds. "How?" "I told them," she says. Ortiz actually laughs. "Let them sweat," he replies. Panic produces evidence. In Bates's office upstairs, the meltdown is fully underway. Bates paces like a caged animal. Harris and Danner sit rigid in front of his desk, both looking years older than when the shift started. "Do you grasp what you've done?" Bates asks, voice low and lethal. "We followed procedure," Harris insists, voice cracking. "You put your hands on a federal prosecutor targeting this department," Bates snaps. "We didn't know," Danner mutters. "You should have," Bates fires back. He yanks open a drawer and slams a thick folder onto the desk. Confidential, federal seal stamped across the cover. "She's been tracking us for over 2 years, Bates says, flipping pages. Internal memos, surveillance summaries, evidence logs, all bearing Elena Ruiz's name. Every sketchy arrest, every questionable search, every staged scene," he continues. "She has it all." Harris's phone vibrates. A text from an unknown number. "Federal warrants execute in 30 minutes. Find counsel." His fingers tremble as he passes the screen to Bates. "It's done," Bates says quietly. But Elena's phone shows a parallel message from Ortiz. "Raid go. Clean sweep entering final phase." Elena finally pulls out of the lot, though not far. She cruises around the block, then parks where she can still see the station. Bates begins shredding orders, but he's too late. Megan's upload has already duplicated the body cam footage onto secure federal servers. Cleanup commands can't touch it now. Harris races to the equipment room, finds cameras still docked, data indicators blinking. He logs in and sees the off-site sync. FBI endpoints listed as backup destinations. "Megan," he shouts, but she went home sick an hour ago. In Elena's car, a final confirmation pings in from Justice. All critical files received and verified. The long corruption case she's nurtured for much of her career is fully built. Every bogus bust, every civil rights violation, every cover-up attempt now lives in redundant federal storage. Tonight's arrest wasn't a misstep in her investigation, it was the climax of it. The worst decision of their careers just became her most powerful exhibit. Elena turns away from the station at last, leaving it buzzing like a disturbed nest behind her. At exactly 6 a.m., black SUVs encircle Metro Police Headquarters. FBI tactical teams step out in crisp formation. Deputy U.S. Marshals take post at side doors, loading bays, every exit. Ortiz leads from the front, bulletproof vest under his suit jacket. From his office, Bates watches the scene unfold, unable to look away. "They're here," he whispers. Harris and Danner stand behind him, frozen, as federal agents push through the front entrance with purpose. This is no courtesy visit. This is a takeover. Ortiz's voice booms through the lobby. Federal Bureau of Investigation and Department of Justice, this facility is now under federal authority. Officers stop mid-stride, mid-sentence. A few instinctively reach toward their holsters. Others lift their hands, unsure. "Stand down," Ortiz orders. "Everyone will comply with federal directives." Bates emerges from his office, palms visible. "Director Ortiz, this is highly irregular," he protests. "Captain Bates," Ortiz replies, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to violate civil rights." The words ricochet through the building like shots. Panic erupts. Federal teams surge outward. Evidence squads secure server rooms and storage closets. Forensic techs start imaging hard drives. Legal staff fan out with warrant packets in hand. Harris presses himself against a hallway wall, chest heaving. "This is insane," he mutters. "We're the cops." Ortiz approaches, unhurried. "Detective Cole Harris," he says, "you're under arrest for evidence tampering, false imprisonment, and deprivation of rights under color of law." Harris swallows hard. "I want a lawyer," he chokes out. "You'll get one," Ortiz answers. "You're going to need one." Ortiz nods to an agent. "Bring her in." The station doors swing open again. Elena walks in, no longer in sweats and cuffs. She wears a dark FBI windbreaker, badge and ID displayed plainly. The noise in the room thins to nothing. Ortiz lifts her credentials so the entire lobby can see them. Special Prosecutor Elena Ruiz, lead investigator, Operation Clean Sweep, he announces. The realization washes through the assembled officers in a visible wave. She wasn't their prisoner. She was the one building the case. Ortiz addresses the room, voice steady and clear. Prosecutor Ruiz has been investigating this department for over 15 years of her career. This wasn't a one-off complaint. This was institutional review. Some officers gape. Others look down, suddenly fascinated by the floor. Elena steps forward. "Every illegal search," she says, projecting her voice. "Every planted narcotics case. Every civil rights violation." She raises her phone, the same encrypted device they ignored on her nightstand. 2,000 hours of recordings, over 300 documented conversations, dozens of staged evidence incidents. Each number lands like a hammer. Ortiz continues. Her investigation has produced federal indictments against 23 sworn officers. Gas ripple through the lobby, nearly half the department. Elena opens a thick binder, the real case file. Detective Cole Harris, she reads, 17 confirmed instances of evidence staging, over 40 documented illegal entries, 20-plus constitutional breaches. Harris's knees buckle. Sergeant Luke Danner, she continues, more than 20 cases of evidence tampering, 30-plus falsified arrest narratives, coordinated efforts to obstruct justice. Danner slides down the wall, stunned. Captain Harlan Bates, Elena says, locking eyes with him, charged with orchestrating a criminal enterprise under color of law, systematic deprivation of citizens' rights. Bates closes his eyes, shoulders sagging. She continues through the list. Names, counts, supporting exhibits. Each entry represents lives upended, trust shattered. Ortiz addresses everyone still standing. Operation Clean Sweep uncovered a culture of corruption spanning nearly 2 decades. This isn't about a few mistakes. It's about a system that decided the law didn't apply to them. Evidence carts begin rolling out, stacked high. Harris finds his voice again, desperate. "We were doing the job," he protests. "We were taking bad people off the street." Elena turns to him. "Framing people isn't policing," she says. "It's organized crime in uniform." She taps her phone and hits play. The audio from her raid fills the room. Harris saying, "Look what we have here," the rustle of the baggie he planted. Her calm reply, "I watched you put that there." The recording continues, capturing every threat, every denial of rights. His own camera damned him! Ortiz explains for the officers who still don't understand. When Prosecutor Ruiz's emergency beacon triggered during booking, we started live monitoring the station. Every conversation, every call about fixing things, recorded. That, plus her years of prior documentation, completed the picture. Elena's calm during her arrest, her precise legal language, her targeted questions, none of it had been panic. It had been evidence gathering. "She wasn't afraid you'd bury her," Ortiz says. "She knew we were already watching." Heads drop. Excuses dry up. Reality settles in. Ortiz holds up another device, a small digital recorder. "This was hidden in Prosecutor Ruiz's bedroom lamp," he says. "It captured your forced entry, your illegal search, your evidence planting, your threats, clear as day. Multiple angles, multiple timestamps. The three men at the center of the storm, Bates, Harris, Danner, stare at it like it's a loaded gun pointed between their eyes. Elena's decade-plus investigation has reached its crescendo. Every corrupt actor identified, every incident logged, every victim finally on the path to recognition. The evidence doesn't just point to individual wrongdoing. It reveals a coordinated network. Ortiz addresses the shaken crowd one last time. Formal charges will be filed within the day, he says. Suspensions, arrests, and administrative holds begin now. The machine of federal justice lurches fully into motion. Some officers are escorted out in cuffs. Others are simply relieved of duty on the spot. Elena watches as computers, files, and cameras are boxed and tagged. This isn't just a purge. It's the start of rebuilding something better. Detective Harris's personal corruption file is as thick as a brick. The paper trail stretches back over a decade and a half. Tonight's fiasco was never about a noise complaint or a random drug tip. It was the moment long delayed accountability finally arrived. Months later, 6 to be exact, a packed federal courtroom hums with tension. The marquee corruption trial nears its climax. Elena sits at the government table, case files towering behind her. 15 years of work now lives inside those labeled boxes and exhibits. Judge Mariah Ellison scans the verdict forms, her expression unreadable. 23 defendants, hundreds of combined counts. Has the jury reached unanimous verdicts? She asks. The foreperson rises. We have, Your Honor. Harris sits in the first row of defendants, federal jumpsuit replacing his tailored suit. His hands tremble as he grips the table edge. On the charge of conspiracy to violate civil rights under color of law, the foreperson reads, we find the defendant, Cole Harris, guilty. A murmur ripples through the gallery. Elena exhales slowly. It's the first of many guilty findings in a case she nurtured in the shadows for years. On the charge of evidence tampering, the foreperson continues, guilty. On the charge of false imprisonment, guilty. The word repeats again and again, pounding through the courtroom. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Sergeant Danner draws 12 years in federal prison. Captain Bates receives 15. Harris is handed 20. Their badges don't mitigate anything. Their prior positions offer no shield. Federal statutes bind them like everyone else. Elena's meticulous testimony locked the story in place. She testified without theatrics, cool, detailed, devastating. She walked the jury through each planted stash, each illegal search, each manipulated report. Jurors' expressions hardened as the scope of the scheme emerged. This wasn't a couple of rogue cops. It was an entrenched operation. When sentencing ends, Elena steps into the hallway. Reporters converge instantly. Prosecutor Ruiz, how long did the investigation actually take? One asks. Around 15 years of careful record-keeping and follow-through, she replies. What message does this outcome send? Another shouts over the noise. Elena pauses, weighing her response. That justice takes persistence and courage, she says, and that change often comes from people working inside the system to fix it, not burn it down. She adds, truth doesn't vanish, it waits. Then it surfaces when someone refuses to look away. Pens scratch, cameras flash. This soundbite will lead the evening broadcasts. Megan Price edges through the cluster. She took the stand for the government, told the truth about the raid, chose integrity over silence. Prosecutor Ruiz, she calls. Elena turns. Megan looks both relieved and exhausted. Thank you for giving me a chance to make it right, Megan says. Elena shakes her head. You gave yourself that chance, she replies. Megan's insider testimony connected the dots in Elena's files, turning suspicions into undeniable patterns. Her badge survived the fallout. She now works on a federal task force, earned by her decision to step forward. And Elena leaves the courthouse surrounded by protesters demanding reforms. Community voices finally amplified by proof, not just stories. Some changes arrived the night the feds walked into the station. Others will take years. This case started with murmurs about suspicious dope bust and ended with sweeping convictions and a blueprint for reform. New training protocols roll out. Body cam policies tighten. Independent oversight grows teeth. The city begins the long, uneven process of healing. Trust can't be legislated. It's rebuilt interaction by interaction. Elena's phone buzzes. Ortiz calling from D.C., his tone lighter than she's ever heard it. Hell of a job, Ruiz, he says. The public integrity section wants to talk about your next assignment, he adds. Elena glances back at the courthouse steps, where people chant for change rather than just complain about its absence. What's on the board, she asks. Long-term review of immigrant detention facilities, Ortiz says. Patterns of systemic abuse, questionable deaths, financial incentives for overcrowding. It'll take years. Years of undercover work, clandestine interviews, document pulls, years of patience. I'm in, Elena says. This is who she is. A builder of cases, not a chaser of headlines. She walks to her car as media vans pack up and families embrace outside the courthouse. Protest signs call for accountability, transparency, dignity. Some reforms happen through sweeping rulings. Others happen because one person quietly refuses to let wrongs slide. This investigation began as a rumor about planted drugs. It closed with federal prison sentences and court-ordered reforms. Policy manuals are rewritten. Supervisory structures are overhauled. Community boards gain real power. Elena knows none of it is perfect. But for once, it's movement in the right direction. Her phone vibrates again. An email from Justice outlining her next caseload, and a separate one from a victim support group thanking her team. Ortiz's message reads simply, rest a week, then brief up. Elena smiles faintly. A week, she mutters. Luxury. She unlocks her car, sliding behind the wheel. The familiar exhaustion settles into her bones, but beneath it lies something steadier, purpose. Corruption thrives in shadows and complacency. Her job is to bring light and pressure. She turns the ignition, ready to start from zero again. Months later, the city looks different. Some of the faces in uniform are new. Training scenarios feature Elena's case as a cautionary tale. Community forums no longer feel like shouting into a void. Civil suits have paid out compensation to dozens of people wrongfully jailed under the old regime. The crimes of Harris, Danner, Bates, and others sit permanently on the record. Elena drives past the old station one evening, now under new leadership and federal monitoring. She doesn't stop. The job isn't to gloat, it's to continue. Her next investigation has already begun in the background. Quiet interviews, anonymous tips, contracts examined line by line, immigration detention, different uniforms, same patterns of power and vulnerability. She knows it might take another decade to fully crack. That's fine. She has patience and a long memory. Morrison, Danner, and Bates serve out their sentences in distant federal facilities. Their names are cautionary examples at academies they once lectured. Meanwhile, their former victims slowly rebuild lives, some with settlement checks, some with simple public acknowledgement of the wrong done. Elena sits at her desk late one night, surrounded by case files from the new assignment. She thinks about how easily systems warp when no one's watching closely, about how complex justice really is. For every explosive raid and televised verdict, there are thousands of quiet hours at a computer, a recorder, a conference table. That's where real change starts. She opens a fresh notebook, writes the new case name on the first line, and underlines it. Another long arc of accountability begins right there in black ink. She scrolls through an internal briefing on the Metro Police case, now used as training material across the country. Clips of her raid play for recruits, the illegal entry, the planted drugs, her calm insistence on rights. The footage once meant to bury her now educates others. Instructors pause to discuss each misstep, each choice the officers could have made differently. Reform isn't glamorous, she thinks. It's methodical, procedural, slow. But if enough people take those lessons seriously, maybe the next Elena won't need 15 years to fix one department. Harris will spend 20 years behind bars. Danner, 12. Bates, 15. Their careers ended in orange jumpsuits and metal bunks instead of plaques. Their victims received settlements, expungements, and, perhaps most important, validation. The record now reflects what actually happened. For Elena, that matters as much as the prison terms. She knows she can't undo the years people lost, but she can make sure the system acknowledges those losses. She can ensure their stories live in official transcripts, not just in whispered conversations at kitchen tables. Back home, Elena drops her bag on the table and sets her phone beside it. New case alerts blink at the top of her screen. She could ignore them for a night, but she doesn't. This work doesn't really pause. She opens the first attachment, detention logs with suspicious patterns. She feels the familiar mix of anger and resolve. Corruption mutates, changes uniforms, shifts jurisdictions. But the tools to fight it remain the same: documentation, persistence, law. She pours herself coffee instead of wine, settles in, and begins reading. In the end, the Metro case is just one chapter in a much longer story. It proves something Elena has believed since her rookie days. Authority without accountability will always drift toward abuse, so adieu. Her job is to pull it back inch by inch, file by file. She's not naive. She knows there will be more Morrison-like figures, more Bates-level schemes. But there will also be more Megans, officers who decide conscience matters more than allegiance. That's enough to keep her going when the work feels endless. The community around the old station doesn't forget what happened, but it begins to heal. New officers walk beats differently. Supervisors expect questions instead of blind obedience. Civilian review boards actually have teeth. It isn't utopia, it's just better than it was. And better, Elena thinks, is worth fighting for. Her next day will look a lot like the last. Interviews, briefings, evidence reviews. No headlines, no dramatic raids, just steady pressure. That's how institutions shift, not all at once, but grain by grain. Years from now, law students will read about the case of United States versus Metro Police Corruption Unit as a turning point. But for Elena, it's already filed away on a shelf, one thick binder among many. She keeps a copy of the initial anonymous tip that started it all, a reminder that huge cases often grow from small, shaky leads. Truth rarely arrives fully formed. It shows up as contradictions, rumors, gaps in stories. Her work is to follow those threads no matter how tangled they look at first. On some nights, doubt still creeps in. The systems she confronts are big, entrenched, well-funded. For every victory, there are setbacks, closed doors, cases that stall. But then she thinks of the people who walked out of prison because of her evidence. Families reunited, records cleared. That's when the doubt quiets. Justice isn't a single event. It's a practice, a habit, a decision to keep going when it would be easier to walk away. Elena has made that decision so many times it's part of her DNA now. Megan sends the occasional text from her new assignment, photos of community outreach events, training sessions, small reforms that would have been unthinkable under Bates. Feels different now, one message reads. Elena saves it without replying. She doesn't need thanks. What she needs is proof the work mattered, that something tangible changed. Moments like that text are her proof. In some precincts, her name is probably cursed. In others, it's invoked as a model. Either way, people know someone was willing to push the case all the way through. Driving home late one evening, Elena passes a billboard recruiting for law enforcement with a new slogan about integrity and transparency. She snorts softly, but doesn't roll her eyes. Empty slogans are useless, but backed by oversight and consequences, they can mark a genuine shift. She remembers Harris sneering at her in the interview room, convinced the badge on his chest made him untouchable. Now his badge sits in an evidence box. That image alone keeps her focused when the next round of files lands on her desk. Ortiz calls again, months into her new investigation. "You sure you want to keep doing this?" he asks.